YouTube, I forgot my glasses in the car, so you're gonna have to deal with my naked eyes. Anyways, let's talk shop. Overwatch has already nerfed Mauga today, and the Overwatch developers Alec Dawson, Josh No, and Tess Lehman did a little AMA on Reddit regarding Mauga's kit, gameplay, and upcoming balance changes before he enters competitive. That was today. Let's show you the patch immediately. So, right now, they hotfixed it. December 12, 2023, Mauga has been nerfed in quick play. They made the incendiary and volatile chain gun damage per bullet reduced from 5 to 4. That is a pretty sizable nerf. That is a 20% DPS nerf. This is very, very big because, again, the bullets fire very quickly for both guns, right? So each bullet does 4 DPS as well. So that's a big nerf. The number of shots to ignite them before you start doing crit or start doing headshot damage, double damage for the right gun, is also going to go from 10 to 15, so it takes almost 33% longer to light them on fire. I'll be honest, if they're up close, they do go on fire very quickly. The machine gun does hit 15 pretty quickly. That being said, that's a big nerf. And when you nerf damage numbers and stuff like this, what ends up happening is you heal less from your cardiac overdrive, right? Because that affects, your sustain. Your passive that you build from your Berserker, the green overhealth, when you crit, takes longer to start building up overhealth. That's a second indirect nerf. And the third indirect nerf is that because you're doing 20% less DPS, you're building your cage fight ultimate a lot slower as well. So every time you nerf or buff a hero, it indirectly starts touching the other aspects of a hero. So even though it's only 2 bullet points, it technically ends up being 4 or 5, depending on the hero. Make it 6, because when we go to the cage fight, which does take longer, like I said, the duration itself is also down another 20% from 10 to 8 seconds, so it doesn't last as long. If you guys only last 8 seconds, go train. Relative to Overwatch, of course, right? You should be able to convert at least a kill by then. So that's... I was actually hoping that they would do something where a cage fight would actually disappear if Mauga ended up dying within it. I think that was something that some people requested, myself included. It did feel kind of annoying how it would stay over. But that being said, like stuff like Winston's bubble stays after he dies, but things like Sigma's shield, I'm pretty sure disappears when he dies as well. So remove the cage fight if he does die, so it's less punishing for the rest of the people. Like it's like, oh, the team is rewarded by killing Mauga and doesn't have this ginormous cage fight still chilling in the arena, even though the owner of the cage fight is dead. That is all for the nerfs. Let's go over the AMA. User Xenobrina, who already summarized the big long AMA. Also, Cactus Puppy, did another summary of the AMA in a ginormous PDF document, but it does outline all the person's important questions, but it is a lot to read. I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, we could go full audiobook kind of video where I read each question eloquently, but I think summaries are best for YouTube. And this user did summarize the important questions relative to game balance. If you guys want to check out the full AMA, I'll link it in the description below. Let's talk Wrecking Ball. Wrecking Ball changes going into the future. It's basically the question asked from Deer Structure, user Deer Structure. Okay, Alec Dawson responded. We playtested a first round of Wrecking Ball changes last week and think it's off to a good start. Okay, so they just started playtesting, chat. Wrecking Ball isn't probably going to get touched for another season, at least 2 seasons is my anticipation. But Alec does say, overall, we're looking at making it a bit easier to play alongside Wrecking Ball with various support heroes. So perhaps a unique synergy with support heroes. I don't know what that means. Increase Ball's options in combat, and implement some quality of life changes. In terms of the timeline, it does depend on how far we go with some of the changes and what's required there. It could end up as a bigger patch. It could end up with giving Wrecking Ball a new ability. Right now, though, I think it'll lean closer to the first and not need the same sort of support that Roadhog and Sombra needed. Hopefully get something out there in the next few seasons. We'll cry for a little bit longer. When I say cry, not really. I mean, listen, if you play Wrecking Ball and they're not swapping to any of the multiple counters, you can still sort of manage, but he does get outclassed a little bit at this time. If you were to ask me what playing easier, this is open interpretation and they're still testing it. Some people are saying Nano Ball for Constant Flame. You know what came up in my head as soon as I read this? I thought maybe support heroes can latch on to Ball. Ball can grapple them and just yoink them with you. Kind of like Mauga's ult with the chain, but you just drag them along. But that's probably not realistic. Next change, tank buffs into Season 8. So that's this season. Alec Dawson says, we wanted to lift up some of the other tanks that we knew would have a particularly hard time with Mauga, but the changes themselves weren't necessarily tied to their direct matchup with Mauga. The change to Doomfist Ultimate, for example, was something we believed would help players engage with it more regularly. The change to Winston's primary fire helps him in a number of matchups. For Roadhog, we saw that internally he had quite a hard time with Mauga, so even though he had been performing quite well across our rank thresholds, we decided to hold off on any changes. How Roadhog slots into the meta will be made clear with the upcoming Mauga changes and Mauga's inclusion into competitive. So anyways, if you guys have been playing quick play, Mauga does farm Hog pretty well. He's just a giant body, and the playstyle that Mauga is right now is you just keep shooting the other tank, and if they have a Roadhog, I mean, if they have a Mauga, you shoot the Mauga until they burn, and you build up a lot of overhealth. Same with Roadhog, same idea. So it's interesting how they're not really touching Roadhog. We're gonna see how he kind of slots before they tweak him. They did change some of the other tanks. Like they want to give more insight on the tanks, by the way. And also a lot of the Doomfist mains kept giving me a hard time, you know, when I made the claim that going up into your ultimate and healing is a net buff despite the 16% like rate of charge. You know, QuakeDawn and some of the comments are like, no, KarQ, this is objectively a nerf because going into your ultimate does nothing because you don't need the HP. And I'm like, dude, you're literally getting HP. How is that a bad thing ever? And then the only person who was like against or disagreed was Dante, who was another respected player. He's like, dude, what are you talking about? This is a fucking buff. But a lot of Doom players, only Doom players, think it's a nerf still. But I saw Dante on Twitter being like, nah, if you're engaging without your ultimate, that's just a you problem. This is still a buff. But like the fact that you can stay in 4 seconds still means you're absorbing damage. You land with overhealth and you're still soaking a couple hundred damage. Yeah, you can't kill anything still because that's not adjusted, but you're still drawing cooldowns to you. You're still taking cooldowns from enemy players and soaking damage, which creates space. May not be in the way you imagine, it's not that pretty, but you're still healing without completely disengaging in the fight, landing on a health pack, and then burning 2 cooldowns of yourself to re-engage in the fight, and then your team has to like play without you for a few seconds. How in that way is that a nerf still? I still understand like building it slower is a nerf, but like I still think it's a net buff. But like you just have to adjust your playstyle and you have an extra option. You don't have to stay the full 4 seconds to heal 300 HP. But, you know, Josh No on the Mauga tank matchups from another question from Reddit. Mauga is intended, this is Josh's answer, excuse me. So the question was regarding Mauga's tank matchups, and the game designer, or hero designer, Josh No said, Mauga is intended to be an aggressive, high damage output tank, as he offers less in defense to his team compared to other tank options, and doesn't have great mobility. We are lowering Mauga's weapon damage in general, which will help some of where this can feel extreme at times. He has some good and bad matchups within the tank role, which is great for creating some depth. I will say, I don't know what you guys have experienced, but I've been playing a lot of quick play with Flats and friends lately. I will say the best matchup I've personally found when playing against Mauga is Sigma. I think I played Sigma like 6 times against Mauga. I haven't lost a single time. But when I played like some other heroes, I tried playing Winston against it, and I'm like, nah, this ain't it. I had to switch literally immediately. I was getting owned in the first 2 rounds. I swapped to Sigma, and then we just cooked. So it's not necessarily a role-wide problem. Sigma and D.Va, oh, right here. Wait, Sigma and D.Va match up well and have an advantage against him. I also did play D.Va. I didn't really feel like I was a strong matchup. It felt kind of neutral because I kind of just like mitigate his damage, but like he heals so much where I can't actually kill him. So it felt even, but Sigma felt like super advantageous because I could actually shield off his Ana and his Kiriko to actually cut his sustain. D.Va, yes, I can hold Matrix for a moment, but like the moment my Matrix goes down, like he does get pumped. They said Roadhog, Junker Queen, and Ramattra are fairly even. Didn't they just say Roadhog, he had a hard time with Mauga from Alec, and then they just said Roadhog was even? This is where just perception and in your rank, relative rank when you play in these matchups probably matters. Okay, and Zarya and Ryan can do decently but require more support from the team. Mauga is the strongest against dive tanks and Orisa. D.Va's kind of dive? Well, I guess they mean like Winston, which I agree with. Ball? Probably, but I feel like Ball just runs away. Interesting on how Josh sees the tank-specific matchups. Orisa sort of makes sense, because you can crit on Orisa when she pops Fortify, which basically not nullifies it, but does like remove that one advantage that Orisa has, not being able to be headshot, makes her so tanky and Fortify. Except now you can, as Mauga. Josh knows answers on Mauga's dual guns, how they do add or do not add depth to his playstyle. Josh did say, we'll have to see how this develops over time, as there's always a learning curve for new heroes. Shooting both guns is not always more effective due to the large spread and random nature of it. That's right. Learning when to use each firing mode to your advantage is part of the fun. Generally, if enemies are further than 15 meters or so, you'll want to use alternating primary secondary fire. So that's right. This is a Mauga tip in general. To elaborate on this, one tip you guys can do is you can ping an enemy as Mauga, and it tells you the distance between them. Because what's 15 meters? Like you may know it in real life, unless you're American and you like are on the wrong system, then yeah, you're screwed. But in Overwatch, 15 meters, what does that look like? Ping them, you'll see the distance, 15 meters. If they're further than that, just use the burning gun to set them on fire because the spread is tighter. When you do fire both, the spread goes wider, so you want to be closer for that, right? So ping them, light them on fire, and then switch guns beyond 15 meters for long range poke. When you get up close, use both. Alec on the readability of stacked abilities like an Orisa who was nanoed and burning. Oh, this one's interesting. There's ones where like they're nanoed, they're burning from Mauga, they're in fortify, and so on and so forth. Like if you had to just sit here and guess what effect the Orisa is under, it's very hard to tell. And visual clarity is a pretty important thing to distinguish as we inevitably add more heroes to the game with their own set of abilities like visual kits. We'll continue to look at past VFX and new VFX to make sure they all play nicely together. You have to go back in the past, that's right. We always strive for clarity, but the Orisa post was a great example of how it can be difficult to read some of the stacking effects. Okay, so the bottom line is team is currently talking about solutions for that. All they want to know is, have you guys seen it? The dev said yes, so thank you. Oh, okay, tests. Designer tests on future sustained nerfs to Mauga referencing the new hotfix. Okay, test says we are reducing the damage and the patch went live in this morning, blah, 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 blah. It does inadvertently affect how much lifesteal receives during cardiac overdrive. Yeah, so there's a two-parter effect. I mentioned this during the patch. Nothing new here. Next question. Alec on a possible Reaper rework. Interesting. Reaper is also on that list, okay? We had our first brainstorm and have aligned on our overall goals on what we want to see with Reaper's abilities. Wow. One of those goals is modernizing Reaper's kit. Shadow Step and Wraith Form standing out there. Okay, we've also explored some new abilities for Reaper, maybe on the right click, because Reaper doesn't have an ability on right click or secondary fire, whatever that is on controller, left trigger or something. But we don't want to take the space just because it's available. If we add something there, we want to give him slightly more decision making in combat than he currently has. So that's something to look at. I think Reaper in a vacuum isn't a weak hero. He's a shotgun, close range duelist. If he gets up close, he is very punishing, but like I guess they're saying he's kind of fallen behind because I mean he does have a gap closer in the Shadow Step, but it does feel kind of slow and a little predictable. In a vacuum, I don't think Reaper is bad. He's played in some Overwatch League matches, but he's just not fun and just not popular. He's a cool, like, you know, undead character, but he's just so one-dimensional. Fly away. That's it. Right. Make him a bit more modern in terms of the fun. You know, you can argue that he can be pretty well played situationally, especially against Mauga. When I played DPS, I played Reaper with Mauga, and Reaper kind of cooks him. Question on Mauga's cage fight locking movement abilities and how it aligns with other heroes. Josh No says, this is usually trying to be consistent with game mechanics. We do make exceptions when necessary for the sake of game balance, but the less often we need to do it, the easier it is for players to learn and understand these many interactions across multiple heroes. Shout out to my Mythbuster series, which we go through hero interactions that people are always curious about. Stuff like Sombra can't EMP Tree of Life anymore as of recent patches, but Sombra can EMP and destroy Mei's ultimate. It completely wipes away, you know, things like that. Mauga's ultimate now tethers. Mauga's ultimate tethers are applying what we call a mobility lock, which disables movement abilities. Other things that can use this mobility lock, or that use this mobility lock mechanic, are Junkrat's Steel Trap, Cast Magnetic Grenade Hinder, Zarya and Sigma's ultimate kind of like locks them in. For gameplay consistency, you should be able to use Symmetra Teleporter and Life Weaver's Life Grip against those abilities. Same with like Orisa's Fortify. So I guess Josh was basically saying how you can get rid of mobility lock, which is these couple of examples, but that's about it. Mobility lock is pretty powerful, but some people are saying it's really annoying in Mauga's cage fight, but like getting caught in Sigma's Flux is equally pretty punishing as well, right? You're in the air, you're locked in if you don't have any sort of defensive things. Although you can get Suzu'd, so I guess there's an argument to be made there. And I think cage fight is a pretty good ultimate, but it doesn't feel like super outrageous. I think the nerfs today were okay, lowering the duration, but definitely remove it after he dies. Okay, next. Tests on the possible heat system for Mauga's gun, similar to Orisa's primary fire. Interesting. Right now, there's not a strong desire to potentially make such a swap. Heat systems give significantly more damage uptime compared to traditional ammo systems. They're functionally just a constant reload you can cancel at any time unless you hit 0 ammo. The reload time does give players a window of opportunity to avoid his fire. Now that they brought this idea up, I actually don't see heat system being terrible for Mauga, because right now he's a little, you don't really have to think with Mauga. He barely has to reload. You just hold the weapons down and just, you know, do your thing. So having a heat system makes you have to think about cycling abilities, but Orisa is probably better suited for that because you can decide whether to spin in and use that mobility, look for a spear before like going back to the heat system. But Mauga is very like, you just have to overrun and then you just shoot forever. There's not a third ability to think about besides cage fight. May not be a bad idea if it's his gun's really oppressive, but again, they already nerfed the chain gun's damage from 5 to 4. That might be enough to kind of to slow down the lethality of constant shooting. Ban systems for Overwatch and the challenges that come with its implementation. All right, we're almost through here. We want to clarify here that the first time we do this, it will be for a limited time as an experiment. With that said, we're still discussing how exactly it will work. He means ban systems in the match flow and where we put this experiment. Should everyone get a ban against one hero in their role? Should this experiment actually run in competitive for a weekend, or should it get its own queue? How long is this phase before you select heroes? How much time does a team need to feel like they are strategizing, but not so long as significantly increases the match length? Those are the sorts of questions we talk about in our design meetings around this. I think any sort of ban system in Overwatch has the chance to be fairly polarizing. Oh, it really does. There's definitely a lot of people pro ban and then like no bans, especially when your main gets banned. The point of the experiment will be to gather initial feedback and make sure that if we ever move forward with permanently adding bans, we've covered all our bases. I think no matter what you choose, people are going to be very one-sided. For me, I actually don't think we need hero bans, or the old system was like banning certain heroes for 1 week and the next week was like 4 different bans. That was the old system. Do people get to choose per game? I don't know if Overwatch has enough heroes. We're not even at 40 heroes there. Aren't we at like 39? League has like 100 plus, same with Dota, so that makes sense to me. I haven't played Rainbow or any other games with a ban system, so I'm not really sure how well this could be implemented. So like, it wouldn't bother me if Ana got banned for a game, it's fine. If BAP got banned, whatever. Not calling anybody out, but I can understand how you would feel if the one hero you want to play got banned that game. There could be targeted bans. The other implication with hero bans is that if a certain 2 heroes are banned, like a team picks 2 heroes, let's say they happen to be Mei and Orisa, then Reinhardt suddenly becomes like a lot more viable. You know what I mean? It can be interesting, but at the same time, if you remove a bunch of counters or harder counters for certain heroes, it allows other heroes to excel, but it's only for that one game. But that could be a strategy. It's like, guys, I'm a Wrecking Ball main, please let's ban Sombra, Mei, something, and like I promise you we'll win. Is that something we want? Hard to say. For me, I like the versatility, the flexibility of picking whatever you want in the game. I'm not really for a current ban system with the amount of heroes we have in the pool at this time, but I'm not opposed to it in the future. Josh, no on Overwatch's current balance philosophy, trying to avoid hard counters, but realizing team play can change matchups considerably. All right, Josh says, an important aspect of our hero design philosophy is that heroes should have clear strengths and weaknesses to create more varied and interesting gameplay. When we look to buff a hero, for example, we want to keep this in mind and typically focus on heroes' intended strengths rather than clearing away weaknesses. That's true. We want to focus on the strength instead of clearing weaknesses. For example, people keep saying, give Ana a wall climb, or give Zen a wall climb. Like, bruh, his weakness is, like, Zen's weakness is low mobility. If you give him some other mobility, that's like what? We do want to avoid counters being too easy and effective without adequate counterplay options. There is a broad goal of making sure every hero choice is viable in some capacity and feels good to play, while hopefully not feeling too unfair to play against. Some direct matchups are not reasonably close, like Winston versus Roadhog, but we don't strictly balance off 1v1 matchups as Overwatch is a team game. That's true. Winston has a good chance to win by going after everyone that is not Roadhog. That's right. Everybody thinks you have to. I've mentioned this before with counter picks. It's like, if you're being countered like by one hero, like another tank matchup, doesn't mean you have to just default to switching. You're just a little bitch. Get good. No, you have to just think of a different way to create value if you're going to intend on playing a hero that has a rough matchup, jokes aside, okay? Generally, we found that when heroes are balanced closely enough, individual player performance and teamwork has significantly more impact on the outcome of a match than a hero choice does, a single hero especially, until you reach the highest levels of competitions. Okay, now we start cooking a little bit with certain matchups. Sometimes the Roadhog, a smart high top 500 Roadhog understands that a smart top 500 Roadhog or Winston is always gonna ignore him. And then what Roadhog, the good Roadhog, will do is like, okay, come on, jump, Winston. I'm gonna bait you. He's gonna jump over me. 180 flick, hook, and then he's back in. At certain levels of play, it gets a little tougher. But then on the Winston side, he's got to be like, all right, team, I'm gonna need you to like get baited with the hook first, or Anna just nano me if I get hooked. You know, you do have to think a little bit, and that requires high level of teamwork, coordination. But I think that's what makes Overwatch fun. If you're in a bad matchup, like, use your teammates. Or work with your teammates. Use sounds a little, that's a bad connotation. Designer tests on Mauga's perceived feast or famine nature and how that can be supplemented by team play. The way Mauga was designed invites players to get up into the thick of the fight all together with his team. Overrun encourages players to land directly on top of their opponent, and his dual fire mode is more effective at close ranges. Cardiac Overdrive and Cage Fight invite his teammates to stay close to him to take advantage of their defensive benefits. One thing we tested in the Mauga Mythbusters, if you guys don't know, is that even if Mauga activates his Cardiac Overdrive, like the big, like, stay with me, you get lifesteal, you don't have to actually be in the initial activation range. You can walk into the range, get the benefit, walk out of it, and still like have a lingering benefit for 1 second before it wears off. Unlike, for example, I don't know, Brig's passive Inspire, you have to be within the pulse range when Brig makes contact with an enemy for the passive healing. Poof, right when she makes contact, you have to be within that aura. You can't walk into the aura after and receive the benefit. So there is, like, you know, to kind of like go back to the continuity of hero interactions, you do have to understand the game quite a bit at the high, at that kind of like intricate level if you do want to get better at the game. So that's why I always say watch the Mythbusters series and you would know the answer to that. This can cause Mauga to go in a lot of situations that are more precarious and will result in him struggling if his team isn't on the same page. That's right. Although Mauga does seem like he's kind of unkillable in quick play, at least that's what I've noticed, he can also fall over, which is why I played Sigma earlier, because if I cut off his supports, he actually does, and he doesn't have Cardiac Overdrive, he's just Roadhog 2.0 without self-heal. Mauga's abilities are versatile and have uses in situations where they don't get full value. Overrun, for example, does let players run away from a fight with damage resistance so they can poke from farther away, alternating a single fire chain guns. As time goes on and players explore Mauga's kit more nuanced uses of his abilities should hopefully make playing him less polarizing. His abilities can also have a lot of turning points in regards to both how he helps himself and how he helps his teammates. So there's plenty of room to change his number as he develops into the future. Same thing with Illari. When Illari came out, when they nerfed her ultimate really early, I was like, dude, people are still learning how to play around it. Once people realize when she says, taste the sunrise, or whatever, the EMP John Cena, whatever the fuck she says in her native language, people realize don't clump together. So right now, people are still learning how to play against Mauga. So as frustrating as he is, people are going to get better at Mauga, but at the same time, enemies are going to learn how to play against him a lot more. So you still have to, like, you know, let it develop, let it marinate a little bit longer. Alec, final 2 questions. Alec on Mauga's current performance across each rank. Okay, well, there's no ranked, right, in quick play, but okay, let's see what he has to say. So, Mauga is performing very well at all rank thresholds. One of the reasons we are putting out some initial changes today is to lower his damage output, which also affects his sustain. During the BlizzCon trial, Mauga was actually performing much better than community perception, but there were some issues with the survivability and things like his head hitbox size. We pushed him a bit further with the understanding that we would have to act quick if things weren't in line with our overall balance goals. Today's nerf should give us a better look at where he'll end up once he enters competitive. Interesting. So I remember when he came out during the BlizzCon weekend, at least I didn't get to play him much. I played it at BlizzCon. I was like, this guy kind of falls over, but at the same time, nobody knows how to play him yet. It was day one. It was like the first like 8 hours of playing him. Like people still have to learn him, right? And they're just like running in thinking they could soak a gazillion damage and just dying. So they're like, oh, he's weak. So the perception was already off, but they did giga buff him at the beginning of the season. They act quick. They acted very quick. It's been 1 week. They realized, okay, he does feel a little strong. I will also agree, he does feel quite strong. So they tweaked him back a little bit. We'll have to see how these turn out, but I still think he's a net buff in other aspects of his kit relative to his BlizzCon version. Although the BlizzCon version is like 4.5 damage per bullet. Right now it's 4, so it's actually a little lower. Other parts of his kit are stronger. He has higher base. He has base armor, more ammo, etc., etc. The spread changes. So keep tweaking. I like how they're very quick with it. Like the fact that they patched him 1 week in is a good sign. You can criticize Blizzard for a lot of things, but I do think like transparent AMAs, dev, all the things they did the Mauga dev thing with Emong flats, like they're doing they are communicating their plans on what and their approach to the game, their balance philosophy, even if they miss the mark. As long as you keep iterating, like I feel like you're doing a good job. If you just ignore it for like another year, then yeah, we're in trouble here. Last thing on anti-heal purposes in the game and possible changes to his duration, as well as overall healing numbers. Anti-heal is a useful mechanic for the overall health of the game, as it helps ensure that healing never gets too far out of control. The complaints around it feeling oppressive are understandable, as debuffs are never something players enjoy being affected by, but we'll be looking for ways to soften its impact while keeping Ana a viable hero. The simple solution here is to just decrease the duration of the effect, but there is a certain point where it swings from feeling OP to not useful enough for the time to capitalize on. The reaction around it does also suggest that healing is probably too impactful overall, so we'll be looking to address that in the near future as well, whether that is handled in the case of individual heroes like Roadhog's Take a Breather or more systematically. So at least they've considered it, they're looking at it. The complaint about anti-heal, I was always saying as an overall tank thing, you could just cut like the CC anti-heal reduction in half, like the duration for them themselves. Or honestly, I've always been okay with just making anti-heal like 50 or 60% healing reduction, not a full complete anti-heal. But if you do that, you do have to do individual tweaks like Roadhog, where his Take a Breather is not healing as much as it is now, because I actually think it's tuned relative to playing against Ana. That's at a point where you kind of need Ana to cut that down. Same with playing against Mauga. If you do that, you have to cut the sustain elsewhere. So you can cook with this, and as an Ana player, I still think Ana would be a good hero if anti wasn't even at 100% anti. Like 50% is still fine. If you give her like maybe like 1 second off, or 1 or 2 seconds shorter cooldown on the full nade while the effects of it are not as potent, could be something to look at. And overall, it would not kill the hero. I still think Ana would be good. I don't know where people are thinking she'd be unplayable if she loses anti. I disagree. She's versatile, she's a sniper, she's hit scan. She's got a sleep dart. Nano boost is still good. So yeah, that is the AMA. Lots of insight, Mauga changes, all the good stuff. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and don't comment about my glassesless face. Thank you.